The diamond reached Chloe West's neck before the applause reached the back of the ballroom. Maya Devereaux recognized the design instantly. It was not a random luxury piece. It was the final interpretation of a sketch she had drawn years earlier beside her mother's hospital bed, a design never intended for public sale. Marcus Sterling stood in a black tuxedo beneath the Sterling Noir crest and raised a champagne glass toward the cameras. Chloe, wrapped in an ivory silk gown, smiled as flash photography followed her every movement. Then Marcus delivered the sentence that changed everything. He called Chloe the future of Sterling Noir. He called her the woman who would carry the brand into a new era. Maya stood in a red evening dress only a few feet away and listened as her own legacy was handed to someone else. The room celebrated the announcement. Marcus celebrated the illusion. Maya saw the structure beneath it. Not the diamond. The theft. She lowered her eyes toward the bright red trademark filing packet resting inside her handbag and finally understood that Marcus had never mistaken her value. He had spent years trying to erase it. Then she turned and walked away. She crossed the ballroom without looking back at the stage, without searching for explanations, and without offering Marcus the satisfaction of a public reaction. The cameras remained focused on Chloe. That helped. Maya entered a private corridor beyond the event hall and opened the packet immediately. Page 1 confirmed what she already knew. The Sterling Noir trademark registration belonged to her personal intellectual property holding company. The filing date appeared years before the wedding. She studied every page again anyway. Check the filing. The licensing provisions remained intact. The revocation mechanism remained intact. The ownership chain remained intact. Marcus had spent years expanding stores, negotiating partnerships, and building global distribution around a foundation he believed would never move. He had never imagined the foundation could stand up and leave. Maya continued walking through the quiet corridor while reviewing retailer agreements stored in her secure database. Every major luxury partnership depended upon active authorization from the trademark owner. Every flagship display depended upon trademark authorization. Every marketing campaign depended upon trademark authorization. The entire empire depended upon a name. The name belonged to her. That mattered. Outside, the city lights reflected against the black windows of waiting vehicles, but Maya never paused to admire them. She entered the back seat of a car and placed the packet beside her. Her phone displayed dozens of messages from event attendees. She ignored everyone. Emotion could wait. Timing could not. She opened a secure communication channel and drafted a single instruction addressed to the licensing officer responsible for trademark enforcement. The language was precise. No threats. No anger. No speeches. Only procedure. Only ownership. The notice would activate a 24-hour compliance requirement for every entity using the Sterling Noir identity. Remove the license. Maya reviewed the wording one final time. Marcus believed power lived inside the Sterling name printed above store entrances. Maya understood something he never had. Luxury could purchase diamonds. Luxury could purchase attention. Luxury could not purchase trust after it had been withdrawn by the person who created it. She pressed send. Then she closed the packet. The countdown had begun. Maya arrived at her private design studio a little after midnight. The building sat several miles from the flagship stores carrying the Sterling Noir name. Yet for the first time in years it felt closer to the truth than the penthouse she shared with Marcus. She placed the red trademark filing packet on a long walnut table and stood silently in the center of the room. Around her were the original mood boards, brand sketches, packaging concepts, handwritten positioning notes, and campaign narratives that had transformed a jewelry company into a luxury identity recognized across international markets. None of those documents carried Marcus's fingerprints. Every wall seemed to remind her of that fact. She removed a flat archival box from a cabinet and carefully opened it. Inside rested the original sketch. The same sketch. The lines were slightly faded now, but she still remembered drawing them beside her mother's bed during a difficult summer years ago. Her mother had once told her that real luxury was not wealth. It was meaning. Maya stared at the page for a long moment. Then she placed the sketch beside an old photograph. That was when the wound finally reached its deepest point. Marcus had not simply given away a diamond. He had given away a memory. He had taken something sacred and converted it into a publicity strategy. Then she understood. The betrayal was never about Chloe. Chloe was only the display window. Marcus was the architect of the theft. Maya sat down and reviewed years of interviews, articles, and campaign materials stored in her archive. A pattern emerged with uncomfortable clarity. Every crisis inside Sterling Noir had eventually been solved by her ideas. Every major repositioning had originated from her strategy. Every prestige partnership had been built upon stories she created. Yet Marcus had always presented those victories as inevitable products of the Sterling legacy. She had spent years protecting a narrative that slowly erased her. That realization hurt more than the affair. It hurt more than the public humiliation. She had defended a man who never intended to acknowledge the source of his success. The room remained quiet. Maya did not cry. She did not need to. The evidence spoke loudly enough. She closed the archive box and opened her laptop. Preserve the record. A detailed licensing database appeared on the screen. Hundreds of agreements stretched across retailers, distributors, advertising partners, and luxury placement contracts. Marcus had always focused on inventory and expansion. Maya focused on perception. That difference was about to matter. She began organizing ownership records, trademark histories, and brand development documentation into secure digital folders. Every document received a timestamp. Every file received verification. The process felt almost clinical. Pain had become structure. Structure had become discipline. Outside the studio windows, the city continued moving without noticing that a billion-dollar identity had already begun separating itself from the man claiming to own it. Maya reviewed the compliance calendar one final time before sunrise. The first trademark enforcement notices would arrive with the morning business cycle. Retailers would have questions. Editors would have questions. Investors would have questions. Marcus would eventually have questions too. She saved the final file and shut down the screen. Keep the name. Everything else could wait. By 7 o'clock the next morning, the first enforcement notices were already moving through the luxury market. Maya did not send them personally. Systems did. Procedures did. Ownership did. That distinction mattered because the strongest structures rarely relied on emotion once they were set in motion. Inside her studio, she stood before a wall-sized licensing map that traced every active Sterling Noir relationship across the United States and overseas. Flagship boutiques, department store partnerships, private collector programs, fashion collaborations, editorial placements, digital campaigns. Each connection pointed back to a single source of authority, the trademark owner. Maya studied the network carefully. Years earlier, when she designed the brand architecture for Sterling Noir, she intentionally built consistency into every customer experience. The packaging matched the story. The story matched the heritage narrative. The heritage narrative matched the trademark identity. Most people believed luxury was created by diamonds. Maya knew luxury was created by trust repeated thousands of times. That was the real product. Sterling Noir's black velvet packaging, signature typography, boutique scent profile, invitation-only collector appointments, private client language, and heritage catalog structure had all originated from systems Maya designed. Customers did not simply buy diamonds. They purchased entry into a carefully engineered narrative. Every ribbon, every display angle, every phrase on a product card told the same story. Rarity with memory, wealth with restraint, power without noise. That was brand architecture, not decoration. Structure. She opened another file. Check the chain. A detailed licensing. Dependency report appeared on her screen. Marcus had expanded aggressively during the previous 3 years, opening new locations, negotiating high-profile partnerships, and chasing visibility in elite circles. What he never understood was that visibility and legitimacy were not the same thing. Every expansion agreement assumed uninterrupted trademark authorization. Every campaign assumed uninterrupted trademark authorization. Every retailer assumed uninterrupted trademark authorization. Remove that single pillar, and the structure would begin questioning itself. Maya continued organizing documentation, timestamp after timestamp, verification after verification. Precision mattered. Meanwhile, several miles away, Marcus was enjoying the early success of Chloe's new campaign. Interviews were being scheduled. Editorial features were being prepared. Social media engagement numbers continued rising. To him, the market looked healthy. To Maya, it looked delayed. There was a difference. The first inquiries began arriving shortly before noon. A retailer requested ownership clarification. A licensing department requested updated authorization documents. A fashion publication asked for verification regarding intellectual property claims connected to the Sterling Noir identity. The questions themselves were not dangerous. Yet, what mattered was their direction. Maya noticed the pattern immediately. The market was beginning to investigate the foundation. Preserve the record. She archived every communication and continued working. There was no celebration inside the studio. Only discipline. Only preparation. By late afternoon, a copy of Marcus's latest interview appeared on her screen. He spoke confidently about legacy, family prestige, and the future of the Sterling name. He mentioned Chloe repeatedly. He mentioned himself repeatedly. He never mentioned Maya. Not once. Maya watched the interview until the end. Then she replayed a single section. A journalist had asked who originally created the identity system that transformed Sterling Noir from a jewelry company into a luxury symbol. Marcus answered too quickly. He redirected the conversation almost immediately. He smiled. He moved on. But the reaction revealed more than the answer. There it was. The weakness. Marcus did not fear competition. He feared recognition. He could tolerate criticism. He could not tolerate acknowledgement that someone else had built the thing he claimed to own. For years, he had convinced himself that the Sterling name created the brand. The truth was more dangerous. The market trusted Sterling Noir because Maya taught it why it should. He had mistaken inheritance for value. He had mistaken visibility for authorship. Most of all, he had mistaken silence for surrender. That mistake was about to become very expensive. Arrogance is a heavy crown that blinds a man to the very foundation holding him up. The most dangerous kind of arrogance is not loud. It is polished. It wears expensive watches, speaks with confidence, and slowly convinces itself that ownership and creation are the same thing. Marcus Sterling had spent years standing beneath the spotlight until he forgot who built the stage. Maya understood something different. A luxury brand is not a logo. It is not a store. It is not even a product. It is a shared belief repeated so many times that people begin treating it as truth. The moment Marcus placed her mother's diamond around Chloe's neck, he revealed what he had never truly valued. Not the diamond, the meaning. Some betrayals arrive disguised as gifts. Others arrive disguised as success. This one arrived as both. By the end of the week, Maya no longer spent her mornings reviewing Sterling Noir's future. She spent them building her own. Her private brand studio transformed into a command center for a completely different kind of empire. No display cases. No red carpets. No cameras. Just strategy. Floor-to-ceiling boards displayed licensing maps, market perception reports, consumer trust studies, and international trademark opportunities. The room reflected how Maya had always worked. Quietly. Precisely. Effectively. She met with a licensing officer through a secure video conference and reviewed several incoming requests from international luxury groups interested in discussing future partnerships if the Sterling Noir situation continued. Deteriorating. Maya made no promises. She simply listened. Information was more valuable than celebration. Keep listening. Another screen displayed real-time monitoring data collected from fashion publications and luxury industry analysts. The questions were increasing. Editorial writers wanted clarification about ownership claims. Retail executives wanted legal certainty before renewing seasonal campaigns. Industry observers wanted transparency. Nobody was accusing Marcus of wrongdoing yet. But confidence had started asking questions. That was enough. Maya spent the afternoon reviewing archived brand positioning documents she had created years earlier. The deeper she looked, the clearer the pattern became. Sterling Noir's most successful campaigns were never built around diamonds. They were built around stories. Stories about heritage. Stories about craftsmanship. Stories about identity. Every one of those narratives had originated from her desk. Marcus supplied resources. Maya supplied meaning. The market had rewarded both for years. Now the market was beginning to separate them. Late in the evening, a message arrived from a luxury partnership executive requesting an informal conversation regarding future licensing opportunities outside the Sterling organization. Maya read the message twice before setting the phone down. She was not interested in replacing Marcus's empire with another version of the same system. That realization surprised even her. For the first time since leaving the ballroom, she saw a future that did not require defending something built around someone else's surname. The thought felt unfamiliar. Then it felt liberating. No more permission. She returned to the wall-sized licensing map and removed a marker identifying Sterling Noir's expansion strategy. In its place, she placed a new red marker representing independent intellectual property opportunities under her direct ownership. The move was symbolic. It was also practical. Outside, the market continued examining Marcus's claims. Inside, Maya continued constructing alternatives. One process was fueled by doubt. The other was fueled by clarity. Eventually, only one of them would survive. For the next several days, Marcus Sterling looked like a man who had won. The headlines certainly suggested it. Fashion publications featured Chloe West wearing Sterling Noir's newest collection. Lifestyle magazines praised the brand's bold new era. Social media engagement climbed. Invitations arrived from luxury events across the country. Investors remained publicly calm. From a distance, everything appeared stable. That was exactly what Marcus wanted the world to see. One Friday afternoon, he stood inside the flagship showroom surrounded by cameras, executives, and carefully arranged displays of black diamonds illuminated beneath custom lighting. Chloe moved through the room in a cream designer suit, greeting journalists and posing for photographs. Marcus watched the attention gather around her and allowed himself to relax. He had spent years chasing validation from elite circles. Now it seemed to be arriving all at once. At least that was the story he preferred. A televised interview later that evening only strengthened his confidence. The host described Sterling Noir as one of the most recognizable luxury names in the country. Marcus smiled and accepted the compliment as if it were self-evident. He spoke about growth. He spoke about legacy. He spoke about vision. He spoke about the future. What he avoided was just as revealing as what he said. Not her name. Midway through the interview, a journalist asked a simple question. How much of Sterling Noir's identity system originated from Maya Devereaux's work? The question was delivered politely. Marcus answered immediately. Too immediately. He redirected the discussion toward company history and expansion metrics before the conversation could settle on the subject. Most viewers barely noticed. Industry professionals did. The hesitation lasted only a moment, yet it exposed something Marcus could never fully hide. He did not fear criticism. He feared comparison. The possibility that someone might publicly recognize Maya as the true architect behind Sterling Noir unsettled him more than any licensing dispute. That fear sat beneath every interview, every speech, and every carefully managed public appearance. Meanwhile, Chloe continued enjoying the rewards of borrowed prestige. She attended private dinners, accepted invitations, and gave interviews about luxury culture despite having no role in building the brand she represented. The attention felt real. The influence felt permanent. She began speaking as though she already belonged to the future she had been promised. Yet subtle signs of instability were beginning to appear. One fashion editor postponed a cover story pending additional verification regarding trademark ownership concerns. A luxury retailer delayed a promotional launch while waiting for documentation. A trade publication published a brief article questioning the status of Sterling Noir's licensing authority. None of these developments caused panic. Not yet. But they interrupted momentum. The market was slowing down to ask questions. Marcus treated each concern as a temporary inconvenience. He instructed public relations teams to continue scheduled campaigns. He approved additional advertising expenditures. He expanded visibility efforts. More exposure. More attention. More control. That was always his solution. He still believed perception could overpower reality if managed aggressively enough. Maya, meanwhile, never responded publicly. She never issued interviews. She never attacked him. She simply continued preserving records and allowing procedures to unfold. The contrast grew sharper each day. Marcus invested energy into defending an image. Maya invested energy into protecting ownership. One approach depended upon applause. The other depended upon facts. Soon the difference between them would become impossible to ignore. The first visible crack appeared on a Monday morning. It did not arrive with outrage, lawsuits, or public accusations. It arrived as paperwork. A luxury retailer operating dozens of premium jewelry locations requested immediate verification of Sterling Noir's trademark authorization before renewing a seasonal placement agreement worth millions of dollars. The request was routine. The timing was not. By noon, 2 additional retailers submitted similar inquiries. By evening, licensing departments across multiple markets were reviewing the same question. Who actually controlled the Sterling Noir identity? The system had begun turning. Quietly, efficiently, relentlessly. Inside Sterling Noir headquarters, executives spent the day answering requests they had never expected to receive. Compliance teams searched for documentation. Marketing departments delayed campaign approvals. Partnership managers postponed announcements. Every decision now required confirmation that should have been automatic. Marcus dismissed the disruption at first. He called it administrative noise. He believed visibility would protect him while lawyers and managers handled the details. That assumption lasted less than 48 hours. The next wave came from the luxury press. Several major publications temporarily suspended planned promotional features until ownership questions could be clarified. Editors did not accuse the company of wrongdoing. They simply refused to attach their credibility to uncertainty. In luxury markets, hesitation spreads faster than panic. Trust is fragile. Once questions appear, everyone begins listening more carefully. The market noticed. Maya observed the developments from her studio without interfering. She continued organizing records, preserving timelines, and responding only when verification requests required factual documentation. Her strategy remained unchanged. She was not attacking the system. She was allowing the system to examine itself. That distinction mattered. Across the industry, buyers, editors, distributors, and licensing specialists were reaching the same conclusion independently. Sterling Noir's value could not be separated from the ownership of its identity. The trademark was no longer a legal detail. It had become the central issue. By Wednesday, several luxury partners suspended new marketing expenditures connected to the brand. Several private collectors postponed six-figure purchases until ownership questions were resolved. Concierge advisors stopped recommending Sterling Noir as a certainty. Waiting lists for limited pieces were quietly paused. A department store jewelry director delayed a front window installation because no one wanted to build prestige around a name under review. The market was not collapsing loudly. It was withholding belief. Not permanently, temporarily. Yet temporary hesitation was enough to disrupt momentum. Campaign calendars slowed. Product launches shifted. Retail displays remained unfinished while authorization reviews continued. Every delay generated another question. Every question generated another delay. Marcus responded with more interviews, more appearances, and more messaging. He believed confidence could restore certainty. He still thought the crisis was about perception. It wasn't. It was about authority. Meanwhile, a respected trade publication released a detailed analysis of luxury brand dependency structures. Sterling Noir appeared prominently in the discussion. The article never mentioned Maya directly. It did something worse. It explained how brand ownership creates market legitimacy. Investors began reading. Partners began reading. Competitors began reading. Marcus read it too. Keep reading. Late that afternoon, an emergency strategy meeting filled one of Sterling Noir's executive conference rooms. Screens displayed delayed agreements, pending verifications, and suspended approvals. No catastrophe had occurred, yet the room felt different. The certainty was gone. Every report pointed toward the same problem. The trademark owner possessed leverage no expansion strategy could replace overnight. Marcus listened while executives explained timelines and compliance concerns. For the first time, he stopped interrupting. That silence revealed more than his confidence ever had. The empire still stood. The stores remained open. The diamonds remained in the display cases. But the invisible machinery beneath the brand had begun moving away from him. Slowly, legally, professionally. The system was no longer protecting Marcus Sterling. It was beginning to investigate whether he deserved the protection at all. The collapse did not arrive in a single moment. It arrived as a series of absences. A week earlier, Marcus Sterling could enter any luxury industry room and expect attention to shift toward him. Now attention moved differently. Conversations continued without interruption when he arrived. Invitations that once appeared automatically required confirmation. Calls that used to be returned within minutes now waited until the following day. The changes were subtle. That made them impossible to dismiss. Inside Sterling Noir headquarters, another licensing review had triggered the suspension of a major international retail rollout. Executives spoke carefully during meetings. Reports grew shorter. Optimism disappeared from presentations. Nobody openly challenged Marcus, yet nobody rushed to reassure him either. That silence felt unfamiliar. The market had stopped granting automatic trust. More importantly, the people around Marcus had noticed. The executive assistant who once anticipated every request now responded with professional distance. A retail partner postponed a private dinner that had been scheduled for months. A luxury consultant redirected questions toward compliance teams instead of offering immediate support. Small changes, significant meaning. Nobody called back. Meanwhile, Chloe West discovered that visibility and legitimacy were not the same thing. The transformation happened faster than she expected. A prestigious fashion publication withdrew a planned cover feature pending clarification regarding the ongoing trademark dispute. An invitation to a high-profile luxury gala quietly disappeared from her schedule. A beauty campaign that had been negotiating a partnership suddenly shifted toward another spokesperson. No public statement accompanied the decisions. None was necessary. Elite circles rarely announce rejection. They simply move on. Chloe spent days convincing herself the setbacks were temporary. Then another contract disappeared. Then another. A luxury magazine replaced Chloe with another ambassador and quietly removed her photographs from a campaign already prepared for publication. A private jewelry council withdrew her invitation from an elite collector's dinner. The future queen of sterling noir had become an inconvenience no one wanted to explain. Across the industry, people were no longer discussing Chloe as the future of sterling noir. They were discussing ownership. They were discussing legitimacy. They were discussing Maya. That change disturbed Marcus more than the financial consequences. Revenue concerns could be managed. Market fluctuations could be managed. What he could not manage was the growing recognition of Maya's role. Articles analyzing luxury brand architecture began referencing the importance of creative ownership. Industry panels discussed the value of intellectual property. Editorial writers revisited the origins of sterling noir's identity system. Nobody needed to accuse Marcus directly. The comparison alone was damaging. Keep reading. One afternoon, Marcus entered a conference room expecting support from a group of long-term partners. Instead, he found caution. Questions replaced compliments. Documentation replaced assumptions. The discussion remained polite, professional, controlled. Yet beneath every exchange was the same implication. Prove it. Prove the brand could survive without the person who built its meaning. For the first time, Marcus struggled to answer. The realization settled heavily inside him. He had spent years believing the sterling name created value. He had spent years convincing himself that Maya's contribution could be replaced by visibility, money, or prestige. Now the market was delivering a different verdict. The people he thought respected him respected results. The people he thought admired him admired success. The people he thought were loyal to him had actually been loyal to the strength of the brand Maya created. His greatest fear was no longer hidden. He was being measured against her. Worse, he was losing. By the end of the week, Marcus stood alone in his office overlooking the flagship store. The diamonds remained. The displays remained. The name remained, for now. Yet the confidence that once filled the empire had already begun leaving the room. Marcus Sterling requested the meeting 3 times before Maya agreed to it. The first request arrived through a corporate channel. The second arrived through an intermediary connected to a licensing group. The third came directly from Marcus himself. Maya accepted only after the market had already delivered its verdict. The meeting took place inside a private licensing suite, overlooking a quiet business district several miles from sterling noir headquarters. The room was intentionally simple. No luxury displays. No diamonds. No branding. No audience. Just a polished table, 2 chairs, and a red trademark filing packet resting in front of Maya. When Marcus entered, he looked composed, at least from a distance. The expensive suit remained. The confidence did not. He sat across from her and spent several seconds studying the packet without speaking. For years, he had controlled the setting of every important conversation between them. This time, the environment belonged to Maya. That difference lingered in the air. Marcus finally broke the silence. He spoke about solutions. He spoke about stabilizing the market. He spoke about protecting employees, retailers, and long-term partnerships. The language sounded reasonable, strategic, professional. Yet Maya noticed what was missing. He never apologized for the diamond. He never apologized for Chloe. He never apologized for erasing her. Instead, he focused on consequences. The pattern remained unchanged. Marcus still viewed people through the lens of utility. Maya listened patiently. Then she opened the packet. Read the date. She rotated the document toward him. The trademark registration appeared exactly where it always had. The filing date preceded the marriage. The ownership chain remained uninterrupted. The licensing authority remained unchanged. Marcus stared at the pages without touching them. He already knew what they contained. The evidence was not new. The certainty was. For the first time, there was no audience left to impress. No cameras. No executives. No applause. Only facts. Marcus shifted his attention away from the paperwork and toward Maya. He argued that Sterling Noir had become larger than either of them. He argued that the market needed stability. He argued that they had built something extraordinary together. Maya heard the word together and almost found it amusing. Almost. Years of interviews replayed in her memory. Years of speeches. Years of carefully edited narratives. Marcus had spent a decade removing her from the story whenever recognition arrived. Now he wanted partnership again because ownership had become inconvenient. Maya closed the file and looked directly at him. The room grew still. Then she delivered the truth he had spent years avoiding. You sold diamonds. I created desire. Marcus said nothing. Maya continued. Her voice never rose. You believe the Sterling name created value because admitting the truth would force you to confront something you never wanted to face. She paused. The market trusted Sterling Noir because it trusted the meaning behind it. You spent years trying to prove the name mattered more than the person who built it. The words landed harder than any accusation. Because they were accurate. There it was. The weakness. Marcus had never feared losing money. He had feared being revealed as ordinary without Maya's vision standing behind him. Every decision involving Chloe. Every attempt to erase Maya. Every effort to claim authorship had originated from the same insecurity. He needed the world to believe he was the architect. Maya reached for the packet one final time and secured it inside her portfolio. Keep the diamonds. She stood. You didn't lose because you lacked capital, she said calmly. You lost because you confused ownership with creation. Marcus remained seated. The conversation was over. The illusion was over too. Maya walked toward the door without looking back. This time there was nothing left for her to reclaim. She already owned the only thing that mattered. The most expensive asset in a boardroom isn't the capital, it's the name that the market actually trusts. People often assume power lives inside buildings, titles, investment portfolios, or family legacies. Those things matter, but they are rarely the foundation. The real foundation is belief. A market can forgive mistakes. It can survive volatility. What it cannot survive for long is discovering that the story it trusted belongs to someone else. Marcus Sterling spent years protecting a name. Maya Devereux spent years building the meaning behind it. In the end, the market chose meaning. That choice changed everything. Several months after the meeting, the luxury industry looked very different. Sterling Noir still existed as a legal memory, a case study discussed in licensing circles and branding conferences. But the certainty that once surrounded the name had disappeared. Retail displays had been removed. Partnerships had ended. The empire Marcus fought so hard to control had gradually become smaller than the idea he once dismissed. Maya rarely thought about that anymore. Her attention had moved elsewhere. Inside a minimalist office overlooking a district known for international commerce rather than celebrity, she reviewed the final pages of a licensing agreement connecting her intellectual property portfolio to a global luxury consortium. The room reflected her priorities. Clean lines. Quiet confidence. No monuments to the past. No reminders of Sterling Noir. Only ownership. Only possibility. Across one wall hung framed originals of the brand sketches she had created throughout her career, including the drawing that once inspired the diamond Marcus gave away. This time the sketch belonged exactly where it should. Not inside a campaign. Not around someone's neck. Inside her story. Maya signed the final page with a red pen and handed the agreement to the licensing officer seated across the table. Before leaving, she removed the original sketch of her mother's diamond from the wall and placed it inside her portfolio. Not to hide it, to carry it forward. What Marcus had used as a prop, Maya returned to its rightful place. The beginning of a future she controlled. Maya closed her portfolio and headed toward the elevator carrying the original sketch. In less than an hour, she would board a flight for an international licensing summit. The future was no longer waiting inside a building. It was already moving toward her. Life moved forward without asking permission from the past. Deliveries arrived. Businesses opened. Deals were negotiated. Life moved forward without asking permission from the past. No more permission. Several miles away, workers stood outside the former Sterling Noir flagship location. One by one, the remaining letters of the brand's exterior signage were being removed as part of a complete identity transition required by trademark enforcement agreements. There were no crowds watching, no dramatic confrontation, no final speech. Just professionals completing a process that had begun the moment ownership and authorship were finally separated. Maya never visited the site. She did not need to. Her victory was not seeing Marcus lose. Her victory was no longer needing the place that once defined her. The future she built carried only one signature that mattered, her own. She had reclaimed something far more valuable than a company. She had reclaimed authorship. As the afternoon sun filled the office, Maya collected her portfolio and prepared for her next meeting with international partners. New markets awaited. New brands awaited. New stories awaited. The chapter that began with a stolen symbol ended with a restored identity. And for the first time in a very long time, the name attached to the work belonged entirely to the woman who created it. This story is a fictional narrative created for entertainment, reflection, and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental.